Um, Picture this. It is May 18th, 1985. We are inside a flat on the 8th floor of 103 Leninsky Prospect in Moscow.
Right, which is this massive drab tower block that was, specifically reserved for KGB officers and their families.
Exactly. And right now there are two men wearing gloves who are just systematically tearing the place apart.
And while they do that, you have two technicians working invisibly alongside them. They're wiring the walls and drilling into the baseboards.
Yeah, they are planting pinhole video cameras inside the light fixtures, like in the sitting room, the bedroom, the kitchen.
And then before they leave, they put on face masks, open the closet, and actually sprinkle radioactive dust onto the clothes and shoes inside.
Which is just wild to wrap my head around.
It is. It's an incredibly precise, deeply invasive tactic. They didn't use enough to, poison the wearer.
Right, just enough to track them.
Exactly. Just enough so that KGB agents with concealed Geiger counters could track the target as they move through the crowded streets of Moscow. And once the dust is set, the technicians step out and they carefully lock the front door behind them.
Wow. Well, that intense scene brings us right to the heart of the sources you brought for us today.
Yeah, today we are pulling from excerpts of Ben Macintyre's book, The Spy and the Traitor.
So welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Our mission today is to explore these historical excerpts to understand the anatomy of a double agent. We want to decode a really specific puzzle. How exactly does a man born into the absolute epicenter of the KGB become the ultimate weapon that helps dismantle it?
Because, yeah, that apartment being wired with radioactive dust, it doesn't belong to a dissident.
No, it belongs to Colonel Oleg Gordievsky.
That's right. And a few hours after those technicians leave, Gordievsky lands at Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport. He is 46 years old, flying in on an Aeroflot flight from London, and he is sitting at the absolute pinnacle of Soviet intelligence.
The very top.
Yeah, he has just been promoted to the KGB station chief, the resident in London. He's been summoned back to Moscow to be formally anointed by the head of the KGB himself.
Which sounds like a massive career victory. But inside, the man is utterly terrified.
Because there is a colossal catch.
Right. Oleg Gordievsky, this highly decorated veteran KGB officer, is actually MI6's greatest asset.
He's a British double agent.
Exactly. He was recruited 12 years earlier, given the code name Ossitin, and he has been feeding the West world-altering secrets.
He's been cracking open Soviet spy networks, providing direct psychological profiles of Soviet leadership to Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher.
I mean, he's fundamentally helping to avert nuclear war.
Yeah.
If he actually takes up his new post as the official KGB resident in London, MI6 hits the ultimate intelligence jackpot.
The West will literally know what the KGB is planning before the KGB even does it.
But that's only if he isn't walking into a trap.
Right, and as you'll see in the material, the climax of that day in 1985 is agonizing. Gordievsky gets home from the airport. He's looking over his shoulder.
Checking to see if he's being followed.
Exactly. No one seems to be there. He takes the elevator up to the 8th floor. He puts his key in the first lock. It opens easily.
Okay.
He puts his key in the second lock. That opens easily, too. But the door won't budge.
A third lock.
Yes.
It's an old-fashioned deadbolt dating back to when the building was first constructed.
Yeah.
And Gordievsky never uses the third lock.
He doesn't even carry the key for it.
Which means someone with a skeleton key was inside his apartment while he was in the air.
And on their way out, operating on pure muscle memory, they made a critical error and mistakenly triple-locked the door.
Oh, man. He knows instantly. The KGB has been inside. He is under suspicion. He is being spied on by his own spies.
It's a terrifying realization.
It really is.
Oh.
But to understand how someone even ends up standing in front of that locked door, how a man can maintain a double life with the stakes so unimaginably high, we have to look at Gordievsky's childhood.
We do, yeah. Because he wasn't just recruited into the KGB as an adult. He was essentially born into it.
His family was the ultimate company family.
Yes, and the psychology of that household is vital to understanding his later actions. His father, Anton, was the quintessential true believer.
I mean, the guy wore his KGB uniform every single day, even on the weekends when he was just sitting around the house.
He really did. He joined the secret police in 1932, and his early career involved enforcing the Sovietization of Kazakhstan.
And as a quick reminder to you listening, we're drawing this directly from Macintyre's book, so we're just conveying the historical accounts presented there, not taking any political sides ourselves.
Right, exactly. So according to the history, Anton literally organized the expropriation of food and seed grain from peasant farmers to meet state quotas. Around 1.5 million people perished in that man-made famine.
And then came Stalin's Great Purge.
Right. The head of the secret police at the time operated under a terrifying philosophy. He famously said, "Better that 10 innocent people should suffer than one spy get away."
When you chop wood, chips fly.
Exactly. The paranoia wasn't just an atmosphere, it was a bureaucratic quota system. They had literal quotas for arrests and executions.
And at the height of the terror, the Gordievsky's own apartment block was raided more than a dozen times in a 6-month period.
Neighbors were just vanishing. Anton stood ready to help remove traitors, and it's highly probable, given his position, that he had to identify some of those innocent people himself just to meet the state's demands.
He was the classic Homo Sovieticus, a completely obedient state servant forged by terror.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because underneath all that rigid, terrifying enforcement, Oleg later realized his father was secretly terrified himself.
Anton never spoke about what he had done in Kazakhstan or during the purges. The guilt and fear gnawed at him.
And then you have Oleg's mother, Olga. On paper, she was the ideal KGB wife, but privately, she absolutely disdained the system.
Her own father had his watermill taken by the communists. Her brother was sent to a Siberian gulag just for criticizing collective agriculture.
She had watched her friends get marched away in the middle of the night, but she kept her mouth shut to survive.
Oh, and to add a whole other layer of deception to the house, Oleg's grandmother secretly baptized Oleg's older brother, Vesely.
Right, into the outlawed Russian Orthodox Church, right under Anton's nose.
The layers of deception are just staggering. You have a household where the father is an enforcer for a regime the mother secretly despises, while the grandmother is committing literal state crimes in the living room.
It sounds exactly like growing up in a psychological witness protection program. You have this tight-knit, loving family, but everyone is completely suffused with duplicity.
Nobody is telling each other the truth about who they really are or what they really believe.
I mean, isn't this basically childhood training for espionage?
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that I'd argue it goes much deeper than just training. It was a fundamental survival mechanism.
Right.
He wasn't practicing to be a spy. He was practicing staying alive in Stalin's Russia. He learned from a very young age that you had to completely sever your internal beliefs from your external actions.
He saw that you could love the people around you while concealing your true inner self from them.
That ability to compartmentalize, to build a firewall between your mind and your face, is the foundational skill of any successful deep cover agent. And he mastered it before he could even ride a bike.
But what's wild is that despite that foundation of secrecy, Oleg was initially a very loyal communist. He was the head of his local youth league. He went to a state school. He towed the party line perfectly.
He was the model citizen.
So if he's this model Soviet citizen, what created the ideological cracks that eventually let the West in?
The initial cracks started forming during the Khrushchev thaw. After Stalin died, Khrushchev openly denounced him.
Which was huge.
For the older generation, like Oleg's father, this was earth-shattering. Everything they had killed for was suddenly being condemned. But for a young Oleg, it was a sudden, intoxicating taste of intellectual freedom.
He ends up enrolling at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations, which Henry Kissinger once described as the Russian Harvard.
It was the premier training ground for the Soviet elite diplomats, scientists, and future spies.
And it's there he meets Standa Kaplan. Standa was a Czech student, a fellow cross-country runner, but he's a bit older, much more liberal-minded, and highly skeptical of communism.
And Standa decides to test Oleg. When Standa goes back to Czechoslovakia, he writes Oleg a letter asking for a copy of a specific banned poem.
By Yevgeny Yevtushenko, right? Called Heirs of Stalin.
And we really need to look at why he asked for that specific poem. Heirs of Stalin was a scathing warning that even though Stalin was dead, Stalinism was still very much alive in the minds of the people who enforced his rule.
Standa's request wasn't about sharing literature. It was a coded test of complicity.
He was essentially asking Oleg, are you one of the heirs, or are you awake?
And by finding and sending that poem, Oleg proved his liberal sympathies. Around this same time, Oleg is also secretly listening to the BBC World Service and the Voice of America on jammed radio signals.
Which takes incredible effort. You know, the Soviets used massive interference transmitters to drown out Western broadcasts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You had to tune your dial to these faint, static-filled frequencies late at night just to catch fragments of Western news.
But for Oleg, hearing the BBC wasn't just about getting different news. It broke the Soviet monopoly on reality. It gave him a baseline of truth to compare against the state propaganda he read in the morning paper.
Which sets us up perfectly for August 1961. Oleg is sent to East Berlin for a 6-month work experience, posting as a translator.
He goes to sleep on August 12th and wakes up the next morning to the sound of heavy machinery.
He walks outside, finds bulldozers tearing up the streets.
Yeah.
He is literally witnessing the overnight construction of the Berlin Wall.
The physical and psychological impact of that morning cannot be overstated. The Soviet propaganda machine immediately labeled it the anti-fascist protection wall.
They told the public it was to keep Western imperialists out. Again, just reporting the history here.
Exactly. But Oleg was standing right there. He watched the troops unrolling miles of barbed wire. He watched the guards lining up. And most importantly, he saw that the guards' rifles were pointed inward. He realized instantly that this wasn't a shield to keep fascists out. It was a prison perimeter built to keep their own citizens penned into their so-called socialist paradise.
Wait, I have to push back here. Because as horrifying as that realization is, our outline points out a massive contradiction. He sees this horrific prison wall being built. He recognizes it for the atrocity it is. But the very next day, he goes and eagerly completes his first unofficial KGB assignment.
Yeah, he does.
He goes to interview a middle-aged German to see if she's still willing to be a state informant.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's having this profound moral awakening about the prison he lives in, why didn't he rebel right then and there?
It's a great question, and it speaks to the terrifying power of ingrained generational obedience. Remember his father? Fear of authority was instinctive for Oleg.
Right, it was baked in.
He was horrified by the wall, yes, but he was also ambitious, and the habit of doing exactly what he was told simply overrode his ideological wavering. The trauma response for a Soviet citizen wasn't to fight, it was to fall back on compliance.
And there's a chilling twist to that specific assignment with the German woman, isn't there?
Yes. He later realized that she wasn't the one being evaluated. It was a test for Oleg, organized by his superiors, to see if he would carry out orders amidst the chaos of the wall going up.
And he passed. He pushed down his disgust and did the job. And so, despite his growing internal horror, the glamour of intelligence work, the promise of foreign travel, and just pure ambition, lead Oleg to officially report for duty at the KGB in 1962.
Which brings us to spy school.
Yes, the KGB's elite Red Banner Academy, hidden deep in the woods north of Moscow. It was officially codenamed School 101.
Which is incredibly ironic considering Room 101 was the torture chamber in George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, exactly. But for Oleg, this wasn't a nightmare, it was thrilling. This is where the mechanisms of espionage are actually taught.
He learns how to create microdots, shrinking a page of text down to the size of a printed period. He learns disguise, secret writing, and dead drops.
But the most taxing, physically exhausting part of the training was something called proverka, which translates to dry cleaning.
Right. And dry cleaning is the art of detecting and evading surveillance, but doing it so naturally that the tail doesn't know you've spotted them.
The instructors warned them that if you blatantly look over your shoulder to check for a tail, the surveillance team just hangs back and works harder and more secretly.
You have to be totally invisible while operating at maximum cognitive load. You have to use the reflections in shop windows or pause naturally to tie your shoe to see who is behind you.
You learn to use dead drops, where you leave a message in a hidden spot like a hollow brick, and signal sites, where a subtle chalk mark on a lamppost tells another spy you've loaded the drop.
It was nerve-shredding work, trying to navigate a city while mathematically calculating every pedestrian's movement behind you. But Oleg found he was exceptionally good at it.
He adopted his first spy name, Gordievsky, swore eternal loyalty to defend the motherland to his last drop of blood, and officially joined the Communist Party. He was fully adopted into the Brotherhood.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. You'd expect a guy with this elite, lethal training to be deployed immediately into the shadows of London or Washington.
Right. Instead, he gets stuck behind a desk in line N. He is literally doing HR paperwork for illegals, the deep cover spies operating abroad.
It was a massive letdown. He was shuffling paper, creating fake personas, forging biographies, and managing the finances for spies he would never even meet.
But there was a silver lining. His desk job was inside the Lubyanka, the massive KGB headquarters known as the Center. And walking the halls of the center were the living ghosts of Soviet espionage.
Oh, the ghosts. The reality of these legends is so jarring. He meets Gordon Lonsdale, who was one of the most successful illegals in history.
The KGB had literally appropriated the identity of a dead Canadian child for him, and he posed as a jukebox salesman in London.
To prove his identity to other Soviet spies out in the field, he had a KGB dentist drill totally unnecessary cavities into his perfectly healthy teeth.
Wait, really? Just so he could open his mouth and show them the specific prearranged holes?
Yeah.
The lengths they went to for cover were insane. He also met the legendary Kim Philby, the high-ranking British intelligence officer who infamously defected to the Soviet Union.
Philby was revered globally as a mastermind, but the reality inside the Lubyanka was pathetic.
He was living in Moscow, constantly attended by KGB minders who didn't trust him. He was eating imported Oxford marmalade, reading cricket scores and weeks-old copies of the Times, and drinking himself into a stupor every single day.
It's just wild. And the contrast within the KGB itself is staggering. This is an amoral organization that planned assassinations, blackmailed gay men by entrapping them, and operated completely without ethical restraint globally.
And yet, internally, it was an incredibly prudish, hypocritical, gossip-obsessed bureaucracy.
Yeah, why was that?
Well, authoritarian systems crave control. They forbade drinking during work hours, though everyone drank heavily afterward because gossip could end your career or your life.
They demanded officers get married because a married spy was considered stable.
More importantly, a married spy was far less likely to defect abroad if his family was essentially held hostage back home in Moscow. By controlling their private lives, the KGB controlled the operative.
Which puts Oleg in a terrible bind. He's like a guy who trained his whole life to be an astronaut, only to end up filing payroll for the space station.
He is desperate to get out of Moscow and get posted abroad. So what does he do?
He enters a completely loveless marriage of convenience with a woman named Yelena. They both just wanted a passport out of the Soviet Union.
And the bureaucratic trick works. Because he's now married, the KGB deems him reliable enough to go overseas. In January 1966, Oleg and Yelena are posted to Copenhagen, Denmark.
And this is where the ideological dam finally breaks. Oleg steps into Copenhagen, and he has entered a Western fairy tale. He is just blown away by the sleek cars, the designer furniture.
He's hearing classical music by Bach and Handel played openly, which had been banned as bourgeois back home.
But my favorite detail, and the one that really shows the depth of his culture shock, is when he goes to a Danish library. He is astounded by the sheer volume of books.
But he's even more astounded by the system itself. He can borrow as many books as he wants without anyone logging his political interests.
And they let him keep the plastic bag he carries them in.
That plastic bag is such a powerful symbol. It wasn't just a physical luxury in a world where Soviet citizens had to bring their own string bags everywhere.
It represented an informational wealth.
It represented a society that trusted its citizens enough to let them consume any information they wanted and carry it home right out in the open.
The contrast between the drab, paranoid oppression of Soviet life and the cultural nourishment of Denmark was stark.
But alongside this cultural awakening, Oleg is also witnessing the sheer absurdity of his own colleagues.
Yes, the Soviet embassy in Denmark is basically a clown show. The KGB officers are mostly lazy, they refuse to learn Danish, they invent fake informants, and they blatantly falsify their expense reports just to pocket the cash.
While Oleg, desperate to do a good job, actually learns Danish. He is out there managing the clandestine network of illegals in Scandinavia, running those dead drops and signal sites he learned about at School 101.
Which leads to the most hilarious spy anecdote ever, but one that has a really profound takeaway. Oleg sets up a signal site. He leaves a bent nail on a windowsill in a public toilet.
This is supposed to signal an agent to pick up a stash of cash.
The agent's acknowledgement signal is supposed to be leaving a standard beer bottle cap in that exact same spot. So Oleg goes back later to check, and he finds a cap.
But it's for ginger beer.
Right. And this triggers an intense, all-night, hyper-paranoid debate among the KGB officers back at the Residentura.
They are sweating over this cap. Does ginger beer mean something different? Is it a special code? Has the agent been compromised by counterintelligence?
And the conclusion they finally reach is, no, the agent is just an idiot and doesn't see the difference between one bottle cap and another.
It's hilarious, but it exposes a massive vulnerability in authoritarian systems. When everyone in your organization is terrified of making a mistake, they overcomplicate everything.
The KGB officers couldn't accept simple human error, so they assumed a grand, complex conspiracy.
It shows how paranoia degrades actual intelligence work.
Amidst all this incompetence, a new officer arrives who profoundly impacts Oleg, Mikhail Lyubimov, known to British intelligence as Smiley Mike.
He is this booming, cheerful Ukrainian who had previously been posted in Britain and became completely obsessed with everything English.
He loved whiskey, cigars, tailored tweed, gentlemen's clubs. He sounded like a Russian Bertie Wooster.
He was unapologetically Anglophile, even though the British were the primary enemy, and he takes Oleg under his wing.
Smiley Mike respects Oleg's love for classical music and history, contrasting it sharply with the other KGB officers who just wanted to use their foreign posting to go shopping for jeans and stereos.
Smiley Mike inadvertently teaches Oleg that there is a wider, richer, more intellectual world out there.
So what does this all mean for Oleg's internal journey?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Denmark is the absolute catalyst. Oleg realizes that the Soviet Union isn't just flawed or poorly managed or going through a bad historical phase.
He sees it, in his own words, as a sterile concentration camp.
The liberty of the West wasn't a trick of capitalist propaganda. It was real and it was tangible. And he felt this burning need to prove his own internal freedom to himself.
Which leads to the final straw. And it's such a bizarre but deeply poignant moment. Oleg goes to a red light district in Copenhagen. He walks into a shop and buys 3 homosexual porn magazines.
Now, to be clear, this is not for sexual reasons. He didn't even know what homosexuals did.
Right, he buys them simply because they are the ultimate, most heavily penalized taboo back in the Soviet Union. He takes them home and puts them right on his mantelpiece.
It was a private exhibition of liberty that would have gotten him thrown straight into a gulag back home.
It was his quiet, desperate declaration of independence. His internal beliefs and his external reality had finally collided, and the Soviet system had completely lost his grip on his mind.
Exactly.
So you have to step back and look at this incredible journey. He goes from being the child of a terrified, guilt-ridden state enforcer to a frustrated paper pusher mingling with broken legends in the halls of the Lubyanka.
And then to a man completely awakened by the simple freedom of a plastic bag and an unmonitored library in Denmark.
All of this forged the absolute perfect weapon against the KGB. He was a man who learned how to be entirely invisible while standing in plain sight.
It set the stage for his eventual recruitment by MI6, his years of feeding world-altering secrets to the West, and that terrifying moment standing at his locked door in 1985, knowing his own agency was waiting on the other side.
Such an amazing story.
It really is. And, this raises an important question, and it's something I want to leave you, the listener, with today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Consider the KGB concept of proverked dry cleaning. We think of it as a physical spy tactic, right? Checking for a tail in the streets without looking suspicious, using reflections in shop windows.
Right.
But Gordievsky had actually been practicing psychological dry cleaning his entire life. He was masking his true beliefs from his parents, his brother, his wife, and his entire country long before he ever met a British intelligence officer.
Wow, yeah.
It makes you wonder, in our modern, hyper-connected world, how much psychological dry cleaning do you do every day? What opinions do you suppress, or what masks do you wear just to fit into your workplace, your social circles, or even your family? What parts of yourself are you hiding in plain sight?
Standing in front of that locked door on Leninsky Prospect, Oleg Gordievsky had to face the terrifying reality that his psychological dry cleaning had finally failed. The question is, could yours?